I think the best response to that pastorally is, gee, that must be really hard for you. Can you tell me about that? What's the worst part of that? How do you struggle with that? Where do you find relief from that? I mean, obviously not if she's a stranger. I'm assuming there's an existing relationship. And not trying to say, well, you see here, if you just look on page 12, it says that she's up in heaven looking down at us through a bay window. The bay window's in the kitchen. And I think that's a huge part of how we can be unique. And it's, most of it doesn't involve really knowing anything about this.
We don't have to get tied up in, well, you know, if you believe, even if you do nothing, you're okay. No, if you do good stuff and you don't believe, if you're okay. We don't know. I mean, that's, you know, I have absolutely, as a matter of fact, I'm getting to embrace that totally. I don't know. And if you're pissed off at me because I'm supposed to know, I don't know. You know, there are a lot of people with problems, trust me. As Lewis Black says, we'll take time out of our very busy day to talk to you about
You're extremely dissatisfied with that.
Go.
I'm finding myself somewhat frustrated, but I think part of that has to do with, well, okay, so you just use this analogy of the person who is sort of finds God with their head on the ground and their bat up in the air, and we don't want to close the door on that. And I just, for me personally, in this whole process, I felt like, close the door on, close the door on, close the door on. Because you were asking how we experience God, not how people out there experience God.
Right.
And I kind of felt, and I found that a little frustrating, because you're talking about how people out there experience God. You're not talking about how we collectively experience God, which I think is worth knowing.
But do we collectively experience God?
Well, that's my question. Like, maybe we don't. I don't know. That's what I'm trying. That's why I asked the question. Do we even experience God at all?
Yes, I do.
Well, yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I tell you what that's about? No.
Can I even tell you?
But you can. I believe that you can describe it, whether you can explain it or not. And I think those are two different things.
I think
describing it is different than explaining it.
it's anecdotal evidence is what it is. That I can tell you when, where, how I experienced what I thought was God. But have I defined God? Have I limited God? Have I said it? If you just...
But that was his question.
The
question was how you experience.
Yeah.
That was the question. That was my understanding of the question. And then I was kind of like, it was feeling like, well, actually, we decided after all that your experience is absolutely not important.
No.
And
What we said was, from our perspective, as we started to talk about circumstances and situations we didn't know. I mean, we could have come up with maybe 3 different answers to the question, 3 very different answers to the question.
Okay, but now I accept this is your experience. I'm your pastor, and you've come to me because of a problem. What can I say to you as a doubter? What can I say to you to bring you comfort in whatever the situation is?
Like what Craig was saying about the woman who says, I'm sure she's up in heaven smiling. My choices are, that's bullshit. Or, that must be nice. Or to say something along the lines of, it seems like that gives you a lot of comfort. Tell me about it.
Because the last thing I want to do at that moment is pull the rug out.
Yeah.
So,
and
frankly,
I don't care if she's wrong or not. If she's, I mean, I know this past year, our little dog died. It helped us to think of, you know, if you're in the pet world, they go over the rainbow bridge, they don't die. They walk over the rainbow bridge. But there was just some comfort in anthropomorphizing these things. And, you know, I mean, if you pushed me on it, you say, well, is the dog really in doggy heaven waiting for you when you die and he's going to sit it by the door? I'm not so sure about that. But that seems to provide comfort for people when that kind of thing happens. So probably the question of, the same with, you know, what is God? That's probably ultimately not a very useful question, but the question is, how do you experience God, or how do you experience the absence of God, is probably a more legitimate question. And I think we got it, that, I think our group was talking about how do you experience God as much as anything else. But it's
It was difficult to separate the who, what, when, where, why,
There's a
how,
lot of-
whatever. It was very difficult for us. And, our answer was consistently anecdotal and then followed up by the words, but it's really hard to say because the experience, our language is so limited.
But the nice thing is that as a result of that discussion, no one hurt another.
I mean, and if I was pressed to give an answer, I'd have one word for all 6, and it would be silence. Which isn't an answer.
It's a concern.
I don't, people come to us saying God didn't respond. And we're saying, maybe not, I don't know,
How do you know?
What do you want?
We as a church, how do we, most people who are gonna come to us, I'd say not all, but I'd say a good portion are gonna have a traditional concept of God. How do we have to be willing to meet them where they are?
Absolutely.
How do we relate to them pastorally? We all have our, what we've been talking about the last hour or so, but these people, most folks are coming from the whole Sunday school living with God, which, nothing, I'm not judging that, it's not wrong, but I mean, if that's not our experience or where we're at, we gotta, how
It's
we
not
relate.
very nuanced.
Yeah.
See, I think, first speaking just for myself, what I think doesn't matter. What do you think? Where is little Billy that got hit by a car? I will respond to the question and say, where do you think Billy?
Yeah.
What I think doesn't matter. Where do you think Billy is? Now, if they say, I think Billy's burning in hell, I'm going to say, well, don't you say that? And try and guide them away from that, or at least open up other possibilities. But a lot of what I try to do, it's kind of funny that the 2 kinds of pain I encounter are people who've been burned by the church in a compassionate heart setting, and people who've been burned by the church at a wedding reception who aren't afraid to hold back, who aren't going to hold back. And that's the easiest one in the world, because all you have to do is listen and say, I agree. It shouldn't have happened. That was wrong. Because most of us did it. 95% of it should never have happened. But then if you have an ongoing relationship with somebody, I think the lay the groundwork ahead of time. And if it's a parish or quasi-parish setting, you do it through what you're preaching and teaching. So what if it isn't like this? Or just raising the questions. What if it might be this way? Some people think it's this, some people think it's that. And I think people come to whatever their own level if you don't try and force them somewhere. I think they're tired of being forced. The catechism says, And I think the other danger is it's much easier to focus on the argument, not in a conflict sense, but well, see, it's like this, than it is to hear what they're feeling. And you gotta hear what they're feeling, you've got to. Look at one of our people who wouldn't talk when they first came, and now just through being present, and you have a place here, and we'll accept you, and we won't make you talk. Not that we could, we won't even and then gradually they start to open up, and that can take years. And did. Sometimes the good old days look pretty good.
No, what brought people into the pews before was hellfire and damnation. Hellfire and damnation. I brought them in the pews. We got the key. We're the ones who can get you out. When the check clears, you're cleared to go. That's not a problem. Okay. There aren't many denominations that are preaching hellfire and damnation anymore, and Jews are emptying out. You know, if we're all winners, then I don't have to spend any time with you guys. Okay, because I already won. And that's a problem. That becomes a problem for us. Perhaps. Because we're the people that others come to when there is difficulty in their life.
The healing church.
That's right. You know, that's the pastors, the healing stuff. That's when they come. And that may be it. You know. Is that the healing masses that I do, that I built my ministry around, I had to start redefining healing. Because it became abundantly clear that I'm not going to get people in every week needing to be healed. You know, so I started changing what I do during that healing portion of either the mass or service, depending on what it is. So that other things can be meaningful to them. Their healing comes from within. It's a sound of music, it's a word, it's a thing, it's something we do. I use American Indian ceremonies, I have feathers that I use. Now, there was one service, I had to wait 10 minutes, literally 10 minutes, for that person to let that feather go. So he kept stroking himself. Now, everyone else had already done that. You know, I don't give everyone that, only 3. They're expensive out there. So he was washing aside. I'd say, put your pains in the fire and we'll wash it with oil. We'll get rid of it. And he had a lifetime. And, you know, everyone else is starting to, you know, what do you want me to do? You know, that's enough pain for today?
Here's your quota.
You're done, whatever. You know, and so healing becomes something now that is meaningful to them in a way that I never anticipated. I don't have to play that bigger role. And that's important because I'm challenging myself thinking, you know, what kind of trick am I going to do this week to make it seem a little different? And it wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary. It's just necessary to find different modalities that may speak to them. And I'm experimenting with different, and I notice some respond very strongly to some, and respond absolutely not at all to others, other things. And to me, that's definitional. You know, that shows this kind of linkage that we all have.
And can I want to say something about this because I'm afraid I wasn't clear. I don't mean, it sounds good because it sounds bad. I don't mean that at all. I mean, part of that model says, when he treats me like garbage, which he does, I have to figure out where God is in that.
No. This is just you. That's exactly what she was part of that expression was when someone is pissing me off by telling me something, maybe that's God talking to me too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And it's
Or maybe not, maybe it's just God just being in the situation, letting you two duke it out. No, I'm serious.
no, we
But
appreciate
sometimes God's just there, just.
Right, but I think the question itself is important. What the answer to that question is, I think, is less important, at least in the context that we're talking about here, than the question, where is God in this?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's an important question.
Oh, I think that's the most important pastoral question. Asking it of ourselves, but also if somebody comes to me and says, this really sucks. Where's God in this for you? Or this is really great. Where's God in this for you? Whether you say it that bluntly or not. Because that brings it back from the psychological, which is a splendid place to be, and we should spend at least half the time there, to the spiritual. And yeah. So it's not all roses, it's not all. But the ironic thing is, and I have a lovely phrase that I wrote in my journal, but it's not going with me. Something about the irony of this is that Christ is both the one being healed and the one doing the healing. And then there was a third part that was just brilliant. But it was like, it just came to me, you know, and it was like, it's like 3 times. And we're trained to think, oh, we see Christ in the victim, but that's not just it. There's something about Christ in us that leads us to reach out to the victim. So Christ is the one being healed, the one doing the healing. Maybe it was the one motivating the healing. It's just chopped through and through with this, which isn't to say it's perfect, or it's all good, or God is good all the time, or any of that. Right, bullshit, because sometimes that sucks. But God's somewhere in there too.
Well, the ones that are saying God's good all the time are the ones that are always having prayer requests because somebody's just lost their leg in an automobile accident, they just lost their house, they just lost their job. They just lost something, and then the next thing is a fast out all the time. God is good all the time, which...
Their life is a country western song.
Yeah, and I just sort of draw, but I think the truest thing we've said so far today is the questions, God is in the questions, not in the answers. That it's the ability or the desire to search for deeper meaning in circumstances than it is to quantify. Because I don't think you're going to prove God did indeed make your car start on that train track miraculously just before the train came through.
No.
I just assume, say it was, Montgomery or Sears battery that did it, probably easier to prove.
Because if God was at work, you'd gotten out of that stupid car and run for safety.
That's right.
Rather than sitting there trying to start it while the train's coming.
That's right.
So I want to give you the time that was going to be for part 2 of this tomorrow. Because I want to talk about beyond hatch, match, and dispatch, which will pick up some of this tomorrow. We've gone off familiar with hatching, matching, and dispatching, baptizing, marrying, and burying. And that ain't enough no more. Although it's really good if you do it somewhere where nobody else will. Which isn't that hard. Did you ever notice the Roman, it's really good if you do those things somewhere nobody else will? Because like the Roman Catholic Church, you can't get married outside. Because it has to be in the building, because God's locked up in the building, unless there's polka music. And then you can the summer festival, or the Pope shows up, then it can be outside. But so can we cut through the bullshit and say, it's amazing when I do weddings, people go, oh, we really wish it were a sacramental wedding in the church. But the kids didn't want to be in a church, and the church wouldn't go outside. And I say to every one of them with a smile on my face, because they got God locked up in the back room, right? And they all laugh and have to admit it's ridiculous. So what else is ridiculous? And think about what else, where are the places in life where we really could use a spiritual lift? And how might we provide that lift?
Don't get too far on it, because that's part of my presentation.
Okay.
Don't
Well, I will,
Part of the good
and I think I won't push that too far, then we'll go on another way.
Well, no, just, we could read it.
I don't want to steal your thunder.
I'll send you the PowerPoint. You're the hoo-ha, you can make the decision.
It's good to be the hoo-ha.
It's not always.
Who cut the cheese?
You weren't in I learned something this morning that I had forgotten about the wisdom of cutting cheese whilst in the shower. Now we gotta turn this on.